Welcome to Deep Thought. The need to be right. I'm going to tell you what. The need to be right is different from the need to be correct. Because a person who needs to be correct will challenge their own belief systems. They will always search for truth, right? The need to be right, though, that's when someone can have a false belief in an argument or position and they feel like it's superior. And they can't really hear anybody else's thing. They can't hear any counter arguments because they need to be right as opposed to being correct, right? And honestly, it prevents people from growing. Now, me, I'm gonna tell you what, I like when people give me a different idea about something. I'll use an example. There's a big talk about the ADOS thing, right? And I'll be honest with you. Even the whole argument about reparations, I don't want to get into one thing I thought would be a problem, but then I heard someone kind of address that issue, right? I was like, oh, you know what? That makes sense. Boom. Because I didn't have a need to be right on the position that I had at the time, right? And just to be clear, it wasn't necessarily against reparations or anything, right? And that's a whole other context if I want to get into it, because it's really more complicated. That's why I've never talked about it. But, when I heard this person give another perspective, it was like, boom, because I didn't need to be right. And that's actually been one of my secrets. I don't need to be right, even if it can seem that way to people sometimes. But I do have a desire to be correct. And when I say correct, that means if I have to drop something or I had to change something or amend something, boom, right? I will do it. I will do it. And like I said, it hurts a lot of people because they don't grow. Because when you have a need to be right, you think your position is it. This is it. I don't need to evolve. Because that's what it says. You don't need to evolve mentally. You at where you need to be. You know everything there is to know. And I give that example all the time. It's like, if you can't explain quantum physics in Mandarin, no, you don't know all there is to know. You don't know all the position. Because it's funny, one thing, and this was kind of inspired just watching a hangout a few days ago, right? And the funny thing with it, sometimes when you have this, and I've always seen this is the funniest thing. The people who have the need to be right the most have the least information about what they're talking about. That's the bad part. Like, if you are an expert at this, not just somebody well read, but somebody recognized as an expert in this, then you're just okay, you can get it. But you'll have people taking positions and stands on areas that they are not experts in. They haven't read everything, because if you're going to study everything, if you're going to study any subject, you need to study it from all angles. You need to know the argument from all angles. You need to know the counter argument. Like, for example, in my quest for global domination, right? In my quest for global domination, I always think about a path, right? I'll say, okay, maybe we can do it this way. Me and my minions, right? I'll say, all right, here's what we'll do. The first thing I think is, all right, we got that plan. Let me destroy it. What's the counter strike, right? So I came up with the plan. I read some stuff, did some research, but then I started looking at the counter stuff. All right, what's the other side of it? What's the other side of the equation, right? If I was on the other side, how would I stop this, right? Now, if I was stuck into being right, I'll just take that one position and keep going. But since, I'm looking at being correct, and in fact, I'm going to call this joint being right versus being correct, right? Being correct, hold up, let me make sure I write that down. Being correct is at least being as close to the truth as possible, because the one thing about that too, right? You could have all angles of it, but then something new is added to the equation somewhere down the road. You might have to change up again. In fact, I'm going to tell you what, and here's the problem with being right, thinking you're right. If you look at people, right, everybody has a job. Everybody has something they're supposed to do. their position or their perspective is only one part of an equation, right? Like for, you know what, I don't even feel like breaking it out, right? But the Bagua wheel, right? Basically, the way it should work is, like, say there's an idea, right? Somebody has a plan, right? They come up with an idea. Then somebody comes back and refines it. Then somebody perfects it. But then someone else comes by and say, well, we need to do this with the plan. Then somebody else say, no, we need to enforce the plan, right? And then the plan get to a final one person, and they'll say, you know what? That plan was just whack to begin with. Let's just destroy the whole thing, right? And then you get that next person, right? That next person to come in and say, all right, this is how we can like restructure it, right? And boom, everybody has a thing. Now, in order to see the problem with being right, sometimes you think, okay, what you're thinking is superior to everyone, and it's not. It's just one way. Even with the stuff I have, right? Even with the stuff I have that I teach and everything, you know, it's one perspective, and I welcome other perspective. In fact, I've been looking for other perspective. I've been looking for some of the stuff I deal with. I've been looking for years, but you can even see decades for a way around some things. And I will say, okay, I look at exceptions and everything because I don't have to say, okay, this is it. Now I could say this is what works for most people, right? And even saying correct, because then every time you say, I'll say this is how it is. I don't say, you know, I'll say maybe this is what usually happens. But then there's so much. In fact, you know, I'm known on YouTube as a dating coach. And I've also publicly said, you know, there's no right way. It's like people got to find what works for them because there isn't, right? And ultimately, the correct way for an individual is whatever works for them. That's correct for them, right? So, yeah, I know I'm rambling a bit, but this is deep thoughts. I know how I do, right? You know how I do. But getting back to the subject matter, you know, just being right versus being correct, really, it shows evolution when somebody can be corrected. It shows evolution when they can let go of something, because sometimes when you're being right, you know, that's one of those false beliefs that can hurt you in the long run, right? That can hurt you in the long run because you might be going down, you think it's right, you're going down the wrong path. In fact, any way to know if something is correct is it working? You know, because a lot of times when people trying to be right, everybody around them, you know, even a person themselves, if they admit it, they can see, wait a minute, this ain't working, so this can't be right. You know, there was some stuff, I mean, and, you know, honestly, just challenging stuff and just challenging that causes growth. You know, that causes evolution, because if you challenge your condition, like, I'll use an example, American slavery. There were probably many people saying this was right. But was it correct to subjugate another human being like that? No, it wasn't. But plenty of people say it is right. And, you know, one of the reasons it ended because you had enough people saying, no, this isn't correct. Despite some people saying it's right. And, you know, you had people, they were using the Bible for justification. They were using everything to show that they were right, but they weren't right, right? So, you know, it's something that you always want to think about. Like, if you're one of those people always have to be right, right? Here's what you think about. You got to do some self-examination. If I'm always right, how come life ain't working the way I really want it to? Really want it to. Like, this shit's working for me and everything. You know, is this the right thing to do? Right? Or should I focus on being correct? You know? Because ironically, that's where to go to. That's the best place to go. Right? So, you know me, I want y'all to think about some things, right? I want y'all to think about some things. So, that's all I got for now. I'll talk to y'all later. Peace and blessings.